Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, presented by Sapient Insights Group, the ultimate resource for all things HR. It's time to get in the huddle.
Welcome to the HR Huddle podcast, and to this episode of Spilling the Tea on HR Tech. I'm Stacey Harris.
And I'm Kim Seals. Thanks so much for joining us. Be sure to subscribe and share the show with a friend or two who want to stay in the know.
That's right, Kim. Every episode, we are serving a fresh brew of the hottest news and insights in HR tech. This week, forget about making it rain because venture capital is flooding the HR tech market with investment money. But really, should it be? With all this investment in HR systems, will it be a wash for the organizations who purchase it? Plus, your workforce wants to level up their skill sets. Can Cornerstone OnDemand's newly launched employee development experience, Cornerstone Xplor, help them do that? First up, this brew is fresh from the kettle. Cornerstone OnDemand, one of the leading enterprise HR solutions, has released Cornerstone Xplor, their skills-powered employee growth experience. Quick background for our listeners. Cornerstone OnDemand is a resounding leader in learning and development, with over 7,000 customers currently using their application. They're releasing their new Cornerstone Xplor product, which is a combination of their learning and development as well as their learning experience products. It's powered by Cornerstone's learning and talent capabilities modules, but it's also built upon their skills graph and artificial intelligence around the self-learning process. It's going to be focused on enabling talent leaders to meet their people needs with a highly individualized and fully connected growth experience.
This ties in nicely with a report I recently read from Visier. They said that nearly 1/3 of employees who changed jobs within the past year, 32% of them, did so to learn a new skill. The top two reasons they left their job were the things we could predict pretty easily, which is compensation and improving their work-life balance. But that lack of skills training was a really close third. Basically, these 1/3 of employees who participated in this research said that they had a desire to learn new skills as a reason they switched employers. Another 26% of respondents did it to have more and better training opportunities.
Everyone is really focused on this information being used to suggest new learning opportunities that are most relevant based off of not just the traditional learning model, such as online courses, but also things like connecting individuals with mentors and experts, learning experiences, and engaging them in communities of practice. These are things we've been talking about for a while, so it's not all brand new concepts or ideas. The real big difference here is that this is an auto-generated career path that allows the employee to figure out how they want to work within the environment. And probably the most interesting thing here is that this skills pull visualization approach, giving a visualization to how your skills are going to play out in your career, is really important in this overall picture of this new tool. And the artificial intelligence is going to be keeping track of it. So we're seeing that they are building a much more cohesive approach. The content tied with this artificial intelligence career pathing, tied with the internal mobility and the career mobility, is going to give them maybe something unique. It's an opportunity. The question is, are their end users going to be able to take advantage of it?
The question I always have when I hear about these new offerings or I see these product launches is, will it be different? Will we have a different outcome than we've had in the past? We've known this skills gap crisis was coming at us like a freight train for some time now, and we just haven't seen CEOs and CHROs get prepared to deal with it. Do you think now's the time with these types of tools? Is it going to help them jumpstart where they need to be in terms of even the basics, like baselining their skills they have today in their organization, and then thinking about where that leads to the ability to fill those gaps in the future?
This is a challenging issue in the market, right? Because I started my career 15, 20 years ago doing competency management, which is where this came out of. And skills management is top of mind once again. But I do think there's a couple of differences this year. What's going to maybe change the dynamics and make it actually come to fruition at this point in time is that we're ultimately seeing the mixture of that automated artificial intelligence that's allowing these skills to be kept up to date on a regular basis without a lot of investment of time and energy, along with the focus on careers and coaching, along with the bigger investment in internal mobility, is all going to make this a more integrated approach to doing skills management. We saw in our data that organizations, when they looked at overall HR technology spending, listed skills management applications as one of the top 5 applications that they plan to spend their HR technology budget increases on this year. And that's a pretty big movement. We haven't seen that kind of plans for investment over the last several years. So I do think that something different is happening. Over 29% of organizations are kicking the tires, evaluating these technologies right now. It's a time for change. Will this new technology from Cornerstone be the answer to that change? Or will there be some other applications in the market that will be able to provide maybe a more integrated approach with their HR systems or with other learning content? That's the question the market's going to have to answer.
Stacey, as we wrap this topic up, I'd love to get on my skills gap soapbox for a minute, right? As you know, I'm really passionate about this topic and feel like we need a lot more attention on it. One of the things that I'll be interested to see happen is how we look at digital literacy as the top skill that most employers say they need more of from their employees. We know employees need a variety of these technical skills and soft skills, but just about everybody needs this one universal skill of digital literacy. And it's one of the biggest gaps in the workforce. So while many workers were lacking the skill even before the pandemic began, it really has become an even bigger issue now, more so than ever before. Let's hope tools like what Cornerstone is launching will help to solve that looming problem.
There's so many areas where I think the skills conversation is a mixture of hard skills and soft skills. And that's the thing I think that excites me most about what this product could do is exactly what you're talking about, Kim, which is that ability to sort of tie together something that is ambiguous enough as digital literacy, right? It's not something that has a clearly defined definition, and it needs to be changed on a constant basis, which is where the artificial intelligence comes in. We have to make a point, though, that artificial intelligence is a great byline to put into a lot of the sort of releases that these organizations are having. But there's a real reality check on this because it's very early days. And ultimately, the comments that it's going to change how we think about training, or it's going to change maybe our approach to the biases that we have in career development or internal mobility, those are all things that we have to build into the data sets to be able to do that appropriately, because all the previous data sets were built with information and historical perspectives that were often filled with underrepresented populations not being represented in the places that they want to go in the future. This is where we really have to sort of bring together the idea that this is a beginning of the conversation. This is not, we're going to put this in place and it's going to be done. That's the thing everyone's got to sort of keep in mind as they're looking at all of this technology, is that it can help us move the needle forward if we use it, if we keep training it, if we keep investing in it. That's the hard part. And that's the piece that I think has to be owned by both the employee, the employer, and Cornerstone as well. They've got to find the reasons why people are going to get in there and use it. This application, Cornerstone Xplor, is now available to all their new and existing customers, and it will be available to the Saba software customers by the end of the year. So there's a little bit of delay if you're a Saba customer who came newly into the Cornerstone organization.
But I guess we'll see sooner rather than later how it's all going to shake out, right?
Exactly. Next, this tea is scalding hot with no signs of cooling off anytime soon. HR technology is officially the darling of venture capital. Investor dollars are flooding the industry right now. We're talking record-breaking money. And here's what you need to know. Funding has more than doubled since mid-July. The total venture dollars have hit $7.5 billion for the year. And that is more than the combined total of 2019 and 2020 investments.
For some additional perspective for our listeners, Stacey, already year to date, HR startups have seen more than $2.8 billion in venture funding. And that's more than the total amount of VC money that was invested in all of last year when HR tech startups got $2.2 billion.
Yeah. And also, since September 1st, we've had 5 rounds in HR tech where $250 million or bigger were raised. I mean, this is just phenomenal numbers for what we've seen in the past. There's a lot of conversation about this being COVID driven. Would you say that's the case?
I don't think, Stacey, that there's any one specific reason why this is happening. I think there's a number of reasons that this is happening. Some of it could be COVID related. Some of it is tied into the Great Resignation. But I think in general, it's never been a better time to be an HR tech startup focused on the future of work, because most HR tech buyers are looking for those silver bullets that are going to help them solve some of their most pressing talent problems. And they're grasping at whatever might be out there. So what's new and hip and cool. talking to their colleagues and saying, what are you using? What are you doing? And it's just creating this sense of new solutions in the market, and that there are buyers out there who are looking to get some of these new technologies and see if they're going to solve some problems they've had for quite some time.
Yeah. And we really have to understand that these investments are not just being made in the technologies or the companies, they're also being made in a brand and in people. One of the things to note is some of the biggest investments went to Rippling, the payroll and benefits platform, but it's being run by the CEO who used to run Zenefits. Many people might know Parker Conrad's name because he started up Zenefits, became a unicorn, and ended up getting into hot water over compliance and losing quite a bit of the valuation of the organization, although they're still around and they're still doing well. But now he started up Rippling, doing somewhat of a similar application area. So I do think there's some red flags in the amount of money that's just being thrown into this market. As an investor, what do people look for when you're trying to make that decision? I know, Kim, you work and do your own investments. Is this a conversation where we should be maybe giving some more thought to the kind of money that's going into these organizations?
Some of it is a bit baffling in the traditional investing sense, right? Because when we look at some of these investments, we're looking at who's out there solving problems in a unique way, who's out there in a bit of the white space where no one else is, and they're out in front, they've got first mover advantage, doing different things like that. And you ask yourself, if you look at Checker, you look at Gusto, two of the latest and greatest unicorns out there, both of them are in fairly crowded, fairly mature spaces. Checker being a background check vendor, Gusto being a payroll provider. And I remember years ago when Gusto first came up, I heard about them and I was like, another payroll vendor? Is that really what we need right now? You give them a lot of credit. They've come in and disrupted the payroll space. They have made payroll cool again. Many startups use them. A lot of small to medium organizations use them. So they're doing something different. It's this very simple platform. It doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, but it's doing what people need. That's the piece here that we aren't talking enough about, is what these startups are doing to disrupt mature, crowded spaces and think about these future of work solutions in a different way.
I don't think we can underrepresent the challenge that the HR technology market has with brand issues, right? A lot of the mature HR technology organizations, they're not actually doing poorly right now. They're getting a lot of money and investments as well. And we're seeing double digits in some cases in growth still. But I do think that there is a opportunity in many cases to come into these mature markets and create a new feeling about a brand. That is what we're seeing a lot of with some of the things like Bamboo and Checker and Deal and Gusto. HiBob is another one, right? We hear a lot about them because of the investments those organizations are making in their brand. And that to me states what is a bigger challenge for the HR function as a whole, is that we need to think about what is it that the HR technology is doing for the organization, and is it viewed as a value add to the organization? And sometimes the technology's name and brand is part of the challenge. We are finding in our data set this year, organizations under 500 employees, over 60% of them are making their HR tech decisions based off of the referral of a friend or an acquaintance.
There's another piece of this as well, Stacey, which is how many of these HR tech plays are becoming unicorns. If we think about that data and we look at that prior to this year, this sector only had 10 unicorns ever, dating back to Workday, right? One of the first unicorns in this space. In the last 2 years alone, though, we've seen 3 new unicorns in each of those years. And depending on which source of data you use, there's either 9 new unicorns or 15 new unicorns this year in HR tech. So a lot going on, a lot of companies driving a lot of value in the market.
It is important for the market to understand that this financial investment is a really critical opportunity for us to maybe make some changes beyond just the brand, to make some changes in what we're getting from these technologies as well.
And also to not disregard an HR tech play because it's a startup. If I think about back when I first started my HR consulting career, was doing a lot of vendor selections, the whole financial stability question was a big one when it came to HR tech startups, and who were you looking at and who were you putting in your RFP process. A lot of times we wanted to see many, many years of financial history and stability. And I think this is also something that's disrupting the RFP side of this, because organizations are getting a little more comfortable saying, hey, let's put this startup in the mix. Let's put HiBob in there. Let's put some of these newer players in and see what they can do, see how they stack up against the old guard.
This is a space we'll be watching closely because we continue to include this data in our annual HR system survey.
Quick reminder for our listeners that they too can access the same report that's trusted by more than half of Fortune 500 companies by heading over to sapientinsights.com and downloading this year's report for $99.
Or by becoming a subscription member right now for less than $500 for the entire year. That's it for this episode of Spilling the Tea on HR Tech. We'll be back before you know it with another fresh brew. In the meantime, make sure you subscribe or follow and share the show with a friend. Because when everything goes to hell in a handbasket, it's time to huddle up with a crew you can count on. We will see you in the HR huddle.